Best Practices webinar. This is part 3. We're taking a look in part 3 as to the customer's perspective. What are they thinking, what are they doing, and how do we get the most out of it by incorporating psychology? Most importantly is getting these people to come to our showroom floor. Let's take a look at what the customer is thinking. First of all, I think it's important to share with them that customers will travel further for a better process. As a matter of fact, 32% or almost a third of the customers travel 20 miles or more to a dealership, and a good process will outweigh the lowest price dealership. It has become such a critical sticking point for customers to be treated fairly and to enjoy the experience of buying a car. And we realize that that's not every customer. There still is a small percentage that that will bust our chops and take advantage of us and likes the hard negotiation techniques. But the vast majority of the people, 80% of them, are looking for people that they can trust, an enjoyable experience, and a feeling of being treated fairly and getting a fair deal, not necessarily the best deal under the whole sun. So that's certainly some of the process, and remember that a better process will always beat out the dealership that may be competing with the lowest price. The other thing that should be interesting for you guys on this call is that 45% of the people bought a different car due to a poor or no dealer process. Now what that means is that when a lead is sent to a Honda dealership and the lead is sent to a Toyota dealership and they're going at a Camry versus an Accord back and forth, if the Honda dealership sent a response that says, listen, I'm really busy, if you're serious about getting a car, give me a call or set up an appointment with me, I'd be happy to show you what you're looking for, versus the Honda salesman supplying them with all kinds of options and different stuff and exceeding their expectations on a response time as well as a performance. What happens is that one brand tends to dominate market share over the other. So brand deflection will have a great deal of consideration in there. We also have a tremendous amount of studies that were done as far as the consumer habits and what the consumer processes are, and the number of cars that they're considering throughout that 6-month, 5-month, 4-month, 3-month, all the way down to the 2-week period before they physically wind up buying a car. And at 3 months before the customer is considering a purchase, they're considering 5.6 brands. So many times we think our competition is the other Toyota stores, when in fact it is several other brands as they're going through a process of elimination. That's one of the things we want to not only take into consideration as to how to handle the leads, but more importantly is to start telling the customers why the brand that they chose as well as the dealership was a smart move into that process. Now most of you will probably agree with me that your leads are loaded with what we call champagne taste and a beer budget. And what internet leads have is a habit of when they get onto the computer and they start looking at things, and it's husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend, they go, gosh, do you want the V8 engine or the 6-cylinder? Let's get the 8-cylinder. What about sunroof? Should we get the, yeah, let's get the sunroof. How about, should we get leather, cloth? Let's go with leather. And they start adding all the features and options on a car. They wind up having, it's almost like their wish list or their Christmas list is what is loaded into the internet leads that you're getting. Because of that, we needed to build a process that would accommodate and handle those customers that fall under that perception. So remember that most of your leads have that just by nature of the fact of what consumers do, and when they're sitting in front of a computer screen, they do put their best of the best and hoping that they're going to get an incredible or a great price from you guys on the other end. In addition to that, most customers, 84% of them, send you an email. They prefer to be communicated back by email. So when you break that cord and you're making that call up front, not necessarily it's an uncomfortable call, but sometimes we don't get the results or they screen our phone calls more than they should. The downside of that phone call also is in many cases, if it's made immediately, you wind up getting into a conversation with the consumer saying, well, tell me about the car or tell me about the price, both of which take you further away from the sale and less of an opportunity to create a gross profit on that sale as well. So those things had to be incorporated into building a process. And remember clearly that the average buyer will buy a car in about 90 days. But a third of them will certainly buy after 90 days. the follow-up process is a key critical component, but it's also important to understand that people really don't necessarily know, and they're not as definitive as we think they are when they put the request in for the particular purchase. Matter of fact, to prove that, only 28% of the people actually buy the car that they had originally inquired about. 72% of them wind up buying something different, whether it's a different model, whether it's less equipment, but certainly as they start their shopping process, it takes an expert or professional, and those are the people on the other end of this call who can articulate and help a customer to determine their true needs and the ability to pay for it in an affordable way that makes sense to them. So very seldom do they actually choose the car or complete the car purchase what they originally request on. Now, most of you guys, and I always ask this, is when you get a new car lead, most customers have a question on the tip of their tongue. I'd like you to write that down on a piece of paper and think of what that is. And I would bet the vast majority of you say it's about price and availability. And we know that those are the most challenging attributes of a phone call. If the conversation focuses on those two things, we have a greater likelihood. So how did we get around it in building a process that made sense? So we want you to take stock at your dealership. We want you to say that we don't ever ask you to do something from a process standpoint unless it moves you closer to a sale. When we're hired into the car business, we're taught clearly how to do a meet and greet, a fact finding, inventory walk, product presentation, write-up, trial close, demo, all those things necessary to complete a sale. And yet when you skip the step, we know it doesn't work. Well, those same principles apply to an internet sales process. Ultimately, you think about what you want to do, but each step has a distinct purpose to move you forward down the chain. In other words, the design behind it is you do a really good job of meet and greeting, and once you do a good job of the meet and greet, then you start getting into the fact finding. You do a really great job of fact finding before you start getting into the inventory walk, et cetera, et cetera. If a step is skipped, then inevitably it comes back to bite us somewhere along the line. Well, let's take a look at what those look like from a standpoint of your internet sales process. We want you to think that every single step, whether it's an email or a phone call or something, saying what is it you do, what is the timing that's expected to have that happen, what is the purpose behind it, and what would you change if you could change something about it? Is it an email or a phone call, and is it a text? What is it that has the end result of what you're asking for? And you know, the first thing, obviously, most of you have an autoresponder. You said, what does it say? You take a look at it. A lot of your autoresponders say something like, we'll get back to you shortly. We think that's a mistake, because the definition of shortly to some people is 5 minutes, where others is an hour. If we think we responded to a customer in 2 hours and did a good job, they certainly have disappointed a good percentage of customers. On the other end of the coin, if we say, we'll promise to get back to you within our 4 business hour commitment, and we're back to them in 10 minutes, it's a, wow, you've really exceeded my expectations, and I feel important along the process. So think in terms of saying, what is the objective? Realize that the emails is designed to get people to trust you, to like you, to want them more. The phone calls is designed to get them to schedule an appointment for you, so that when they get there, they wind up doing what you do best. As long as I'm alive, we'll probably never figure out a way for us to sell one of our cars through the telephone wires or through the internet wires or through the space to a consumer's home. The objective is to get the two of you together so that we can wind up completing that sales purchase.